Hey everyone, welcome to day 3, week 8, and we continue on our color pencil week. On Monday, we drew Dani on a sort of ochre, sienna, color harmony. And yesterday, we started introducing some saturation and a little bit weirder colors with those fluorescent colors. But both Monday and Tuesday, we were really conscious of our contour and just having like a very sharp outer contour and thinking about design. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different, which is not neglect, what's going on in our contour, but kind of think of our drawing from the inside out. So we're going to be paying a ton of attention of the forms that are inside Dani's beautiful face. And then we're going to go from there out. So I think it's going to be super cool. Okay, let's get started. For today, I thought we could do something a little bit different. The last 2 drawings, I think I've paid a ton of attention to the contour and to the design. Like my old illustration and drawing from life teacher Sam Martin would say, shapes, shapes, shapes. I think in the first 2 drawings, I wanted to emphasize the value of understanding sensibly a contour. And on the first one, the shapes were a little bit stylized. I almost wanted to make an interesting sort of ornate, not super ornate. I mean, I was putting Muka as an example of somebody who really deeply designed the shapes of whatever he was drawing. My attempt or my daily exercise had to do with being faithful to the shapes that I saw in Dani. So they are a starting point and they provide inspiration, but I still want to be faithful to them. We'll do exercises in coming weeks where we go nuts and they become just starting points, and then we push and we distort and we find tons of liberty. But for this week, I do want to remain faithful to what I see in Dani. So, like I said, first 2 drawings were about finding comfort in those outer shapes, but also being super careful in the way that I translated them. The first drawing relied entirely upon the clarity of that contour. And the second drawing, while it was present and because it was a profile, it had to be very clean, I also gave myself the chance to start rendering form. And I wanted to find a nice balance between the rendering of form and the drawing of the contour. If you ask me, this is purely subjective, I think that is the most beautiful way of drawing. One that encompasses the whole of drawing. Now, a drawing that ticks all of the boxes is really impossible, but I think that the drawings of NICOLAI FECHIN are drawings that really understand almost every single aspect of drawing, in the sense that he can speak about volume, he can speak about form, he can speak about structure, he can speak about line weight, he can speak about gesture, he can speak about weight. It's a very complete drawing. I would honestly suggest that if you are studying people, even though he's super complex to copy, mainly because his mark making is just incredibly sensitive, but he's also working in a paper that has a lot of fiber. I'm not sure if it was a rice paper, but it does have a lot of pulp, and you can see a lot of the texture that he gets from a lot of that fiber. So imitating the texture of his drawings is just very hard. But he is somebody who could draw with as much subtlety when he would put his pencil down, kind of lay it flat, and drag it across and just make a really soft sort of insinuation of a plane. He would do that, and that would require as much sensibility as when he was just carving out this eye, doing this tiny little mark for an eyelid or an eyelash or a nostril. He was insanely sensitive. I think he's probably one of the most remarkable examples of just control of line and softness. But again, it's just, I sometimes refer to that as like a killer touch, because the mark making is so sharp. I mean, this is like razor sharp. But it means that he's putting like all his eggs in that basket. Like, he really is committing to that mark. And it's very, very difficult. I can think of one training to be sensitive enough to have the ability to just do in sort of abstract terms those lines. But when you have to have those lines also communicate form, those lines have to eventually configure an eye, configure a nose, speak about the anatomy of a shoulder, of a hip. It's very, very difficult. He was truly remarkable. There are many examples of 19th century Russian academic drawing that they had probably one of the toughest academic programs in all of our history. So it is only conceivable that they would come out as such capable draftsmen, because the ability that they have is just unquestionable. You honestly could criticize that type of drawing, but you would never be able to say that they are not good draftsmen. That is, in many, many cases, just as good as you can draw. I always say this, drawing has a ceiling. I always refer to Kim Jun-ji. When I see him draw, I don't know if he gets better every day. And I have to make also this comment about James Jean. I think James, my God, I mean, for the people like me that we were lucky enough to see him draw when he was probably, 18, 19 maybe, James was already a genius. He was already just special and remarkable. A couple of years after he graduated, he was already just drawing as good as you could draw. I don't think that you can just draw better. You can do more drawing. You can have your drawing speak about different things. You can challenge yourself and try to do things with your drawing that you hadn't done before. Yes, but better, like objectively, quantifiably understand your drawing is better? I don't think so. I really, really don't. So I think that if Academy taught us something, and this is true for the 19th century French Academy, and this is true for the Russian and Chinese academies that still go on, they're almost like frozen in time, is that you can have an education where you can acquire the highest degree of drawing ability if you are willing to put in the work. But, sometimes I'm very tough on this because, again, this is drawing that I respect. Having a drawing ability like theirs is something that I deeply, profoundly respect because I know how hard it is. And I truly believe that anyone can achieve it if they are willing to work hard enough. That is the bottom line. If you put in the work, then you will get good at drawing. This is just practice, practice, practice. And the more you practice, then the better you become. That's it. If you have good teachers, if you have good guidance, and if you put in your hours, you will be very, very, very proficient at drawing. But if the 19th century taught us something, is that there were so many amazing artists back then with what I believe is going to be historically, because I can't see the immediate state of the world just changing dramatically. That is the peak of drawing and painting. 1880s to 1900s, 1870s to 1900s, if you want to speak about those 30 years maybe, that is the best I think we've ever painted and drawn. There was so much knowledge, so much education being passed onto so many people that were willing to push. They had so much history behind it, had so many paintings and sculptures to learn from, that it was the peak. it was as ubiquitous as art can be a part of society. There were French painters that were part of the higher class, but you also had, more grounded artists, bohemians, drunks that were drawing and painting in bars and getting, smashed. And everyone understood and respected the ability of drawing and painting. That's not the case right now. It just isn't. It really, really isn't. But the cool thing is that we have to keep on drawing in spite of that. We have to keep on painting in spite of that. We can't find strength outside of us. It has to come from us. And we have to deeply believe that what we're doing is something that is bigger than us, that is something that, in a sense, doesn't belong to us. So I'm referencing this time in our art history because I really do believe that there are courses, there are manners of teaching drawing that are very effective. And one of them, which would be somewhat congruent with the way I approached the first two drawings, is the one taught by Charles Bargue. You can actually find the Charles Bargue plates in the internet. It's as easy as that. You can just Google Charles Bargue plates and you'll get all the lithos. And don't feel bad. Those are part of like the internet archive. So those are yours. Those are yours to print and to study. This was a manner of teaching drawing, a course of drawing that was designed by Bargue and Jerome, actually. And I actually have to say it's very, very efficient. I was never taught this way. If I ever copied one of these plates, and I think I copied one almost anecdotally, is because I am very curious and I love to copy stuff. I think copying is a super important way to learn everything from drawing to painting. I really, really do believe that it should be an integral part of what we do. And copying not just for the sake of copying, but studying. I think if you study something and you copy it, your aim is not just to replicate whatever you're copying, but to really, really try and understand, to put yourself in the shoes of the painter or the drawer and say, wow, what was she thinking? What was he thinking while they were doing these marks, while they were making these decisions? I feel it's very, very important. So if I would recommend something, yes, download those plates. Yes, copy them if you want to be super, super traditional about it, which I'm not. I have to be super honest. Then you would print them as big as you can and try to do the drawing the exact size as the print that you've made. That's how they traditionally taught this. These were litho plates. So every student would have one of these plates and they would try to do the drawing as faithful as they could based on the plate. And the drawing sometimes had either 2 or 3 steps, but basically it was just the blocking in part and then the rendering of form. And the blocking in had to do with having a plumb line, then a perpendicular, and you tried to find axes in the form that you were drawing. And you would start with really, really big diagonals, almost like a box that would enclose the shape you were about to draw. And from then on, you would just break those big diagonals into smaller diagonals and to smaller ones. So honestly, it's just this same philosophy of going from big to small. This is true for painting. This is true for everything. Teach your eyes, teach your brain how to see, how to conceive from big to small. Because small details we can get lost on. But the bigger qualities of things are the ones that can give us a big sense of what we're doing. If we pay attention to those big shapes, we can communicate with power, with efficacy, an idea. Having said that, the drawing today is actually more concerned about the smallness of things rather than the bigness of things. So if you've noticed, the outer contour is actually not very important because I started concentrating on the inner form. Most of the features I just wanted to render and to go from the tiny little shapes in the features and around the features just to guide me from one to the other, from one feature to the next to the next. Now, this is very, very tough because it's easier to go from big shapes and then break them down into small ones than from small and have a big understanding based on the small marks you've done. There is an exercise. I've heard this anecdotally, but I've never been able to find where exactly they would say this. But that in the Russian Academy program, you would be considered a good draftsman if you were able to start with the pinky in your foot. So imagine starting a drawing from your toe and then judging the whole body. So from those tiny relationships in that tiny little finger, you would have to understand or conceive your whole body. It's very difficult. It's extremely, extremely difficult to do that. So in a sense, it's always easier if I'm teaching and if I'm ever doing a workshop or a course or I'm doing a life drawing program, I always start with big to small, big axes, big gestures, big diagonals, and then break them down. That is the most logical way to draw. But like I said, I like to believe we are also very responsible of making ourselves better. And by better, I mean that we don't get comfortable with ourselves, that we don't just start believing that we are great drawers or great painters. And the way we do that is to just pose problems in front of us and see how we are able to succumb to them or to fight our way, claw our way out of those problems. You know, sometimes you could just start a drawing from the smallest underplane of the nostril and see where that takes you. Most likely, your drawing is going to be disproportionate, but that's fine. If you teach yourself how to find a way out when those things are tough, when those problems seem hard to overcome, then what you're doing is that you're actually letting yourself be okay with uncertainty. And I think that is one of drawing's most powerful lessons. Drawing is there to help you. Drawing is your most powerful tool when you have to solve things. That is the power of drawing. But if you just teach yourself how to feel okay with being uncomfortable, and if you accept that feeling, then you can rely upon the many tools you've gathered to try and find a way out. And that is incredible. That is a powerful drawing tool. And in a very subtle way, that's what I'm trying to do today. I realized I was doing two things that were very similar Monday and Tuesday. And for Wednesday, I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to try to do something a little bit different. So I am going to keep that variable that we introduced yesterday, which was we're going to use hues. We're going to use different hues to model form, but I'm going to concentrate much more on the inner form, on those smaller shapes that make up the features. And I'm not going to think about the outer contour that much. And I thought it worked wonderfully today. And like I said at the beginning, and this is true for every week, our challenge is that the images that we produce day after day after day after day after day are not redundant. They don't just speak about us being able to do one thing and then we just find confirmation of that. No, this whole project, the purpose is that we push ourselves. We really, really genuinely, honestly confront ourselves and push ourselves. So if we lie to ourselves and we're just doing the same thing over and over again, well, then we have to answer to ourselves. But if we want to push, and the degree in which you push, that's determined by each and every one of us. So I don't want to say, oh, you have to like push like crazy and do all these like things that are nuts. No. You push in the way that you feel is comfortable for you to push. That I can't determine for any of you. And I've always said it, by the end of the week, the 5 drawings that I do, talking specifically about this week, they're just going to be 5 little examples of how to tackle a problem. But my hope is that when you try to do it with your work, it doesn't have to be following this project, but it could be you just being faithful to your work. That when you push, oh my God, you just blow our minds. That's awesome. And that you realize that you have the ability to just surprise yourself and find in yourself things that you weren't really thinking that you had in you. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We talked quite a bit about drawing. Tomorrow we're going to do something a little bit different, because while I was doing the drawing today, I got kind of an itch to just focus in a little bit more and just pay attention to a couple of Dani's features. That will be tomorrow. So I'll see you guys. Thank you. Bye.